Oh, it's a pretty bad. You guys did all right at Gatton. I think we got most of the class here. At St Lucia, it looks like there's only about a tenth of the class there. Oh well. Not a good start. First day of the semester. Quarter of the class turns up. Okay, so good morning everybody. Welcome to Research Methodologies for Semester 2. So today we're going to give you a bit of an introduction about the course and then we'll... Yes? Can you hear me?
Yes, all good.
Yeah, we're all good? Are you good there?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're all good now? Okay, we'll start again. So, good morning. So we'll just, today we'll do a bit of an introduction to the course and then later we will start talking about research paradigms and I've forgotten what else I was going to do, but I'll work it out as we go along. So what's the purpose of this course? Well, partially it's about learning how other people do research. Okay, so sometimes we get students go, well, why do we have agribusiness students and food science students and agricultural science students in the same course together? Well, part of the reason is that's what happens often in the real world, that you end up working in multidisciplinary teams. So part of what we're trying to get you to do during this course is to understand how other people do research. Okay, so it's partially to help you prepare to do your own research program later on, but also to prepare you for a career in research, if that's what you choose to do, so that you actually have some understanding about, if you work in biophysical sciences, how a social scientist works and thinks, and vice versa, if you work in agribusiness or in social science, to help you understand how biophysical sciences work. So in this course, the course is taught across the School of Agriculture and Food Science. So you will find that in this course we'll have people who are interested in animals and wildlife. We have students who are working on plant and soil science, some food science students, food science technology. We have some rural development and some agribusiness students. So we have a broad range of interests in the course, and the types of research projects that you will do for your master's program will vary greatly. All right, we'll have some people doing social science research and some people who are working exclusively in laboratories. All right, so the whole spectrum of research. So as I said, what we want you to come away from this course is an understanding about the different ways, the different approaches that people undertake to do research. Now there are many ways to do research and in different fields, and these are all equally valid. Now, my background is in biophysical sciences, so I did a undergraduate degree in forestry, and then when I graduated I've worked for all my life in genetics and plant breeding, and so I view the world of research from that point of view as a biophysical scientist. Okay. But over the last 10 or 15 years, being involved in agricultural development, you actually have to work with a range of other people with other views of the world. All right, so what we are trying to do is help you understand those different ways of thinking about research. Also, as part of this course, as a group assignment, you'll be developing a research proposal. So the idea is going through a research proposal and providing you some assistance in developing that will help you to develop a research proposal when you actually come to designing your own research project. Okay. So when we think about research, well, how do you conceptualise research? If you think about it yourself, how do you conceptualise what research is? How do you conceptualise what good research is? I don't know if you ever thought about that. All right. When I grew up, there used to be a man on television called Professor Sunderland Miller. There was a man in a white lab coat. And sort of that's the way we viewed science, or I viewed science, was something you did in the laboratory. All right? And now some of us think, well, maybe that's what research is, you know, you control everything, you do it in a laboratory. You might think that research is about doing experiments or collecting data, or maybe it's about doing interviews and understanding how people think. It might be running a survey, or you might think about research as implementing some sort of change in a system and seeing what happens, observing the results. You might think about research as being a participant with stakeholders and trying to bring about change in that system. So there are many ways that research is conceptualised when we think about research, and there's lots of different approaches to doing research. So the people who are involved in this course, so we have myself as the course coordinator, so my background, as I said, is in plant breeding and biophysical sciences. We have Professor Helen Ross and Na Ho, and their background is in social science and agribusiness. We have Nick Hudson, who does a little bit on animal science, and then somebody from the food sciences is also supposed to be helping for part of the course as well. So generally speaking, I'd like to encourage you to, I don't know, who's here the first semester at UQ? Most of you, or only a few of you? There's a few people here, maybe at GAT St Lucia as well. Okay, so some of the technology that what we use, so you're probably aware by now that every course has a Blackboard site, and there's also an electronic course profile attached to each site. So I like to prefer to use the Blackboard discussion board as a way of communicating between yourselves and the staff. I try to look at that most days of the week, but sometimes we get a bit busy and we leave it for a couple of days. It's better that if you've got questions about the course or about things, post it to the Blackboard site, because you'll probably find that other students also have the same question. All right, so it's a lot easier if we address questions through the Blackboard discussion board rather than individually through email. Also, things tend to get buried in my email sometimes and I lose them, so it's best if you post a question there. All right. On the other hand, if you want to see one of the teaching staff, it's best to arrange an appointment. All right. So for my teaching schedule at the moment, I have 2 research methodology courses I teach. One's on a Monday and one's on a Tuesday. So one's Monday afternoons, this one Tuesday morning. So I'm usually available at Gatton or St Lucia on either Monday or the Tuesday. All right, so it's best if you want to see me probably Monday morning or Tuesday afternoons. And so I'll tend to alternate between campuses, so I'll be available at either campus most weeks. Okay, so just a matter of dropping me an email and we can meet up if you need to talk about something. Similarly, if you need to talk to Helen about things in social science, it's best to make an appointment to see her as well. Okay, so talk about assessment. So this semester we seem to, in response to some of the suggestions from students last semester, we've changed the assessment slightly this year. So we only have 3 assessment items. So the first one is we need to think about research questions and try to develop a mind map, and we'll talk about mind mapping this afternoon, after the lectures. All right. And so what we want you to do is, for that assignment, is to think about a research topic, develop a mind map around that, and then state a few research questions that could be investigated. In the group assignment, you'll find that the groups are already available on Blackboard and you need to self-enroll in groups. Now, probably best if you're on the same campus, but you don't actually need to be on the same campus, but it's a lot easier to meet together if you're on the same campus. So the groups of 3. So you just go on the Blackboard site, pick any group and enrol yourself into that group. If there's 3 people who want to be in the same group together, just make sure you enrol yourselves in the same group. All right. The way the course is structured, the assignment is structured, it's probably good if you get people who are not in your same discipline area to work in your group. All right, because what we're asking you to do this semester is to design a multidisciplinary project. Okay, and we'll talk about that a bit later. So it would probably help if you have someone who has an interest more in social science and someone who's a biophysical scientist, rather than having 3 food scientists, for instance, in the same group, although that might be convenient for you. All right. So we have the first assignment's about mind mapping, and then you should use that same technique when you come to do the group assignment, when you start thinking as a group about a research topic and research questions that you could develop a proposal together as a group. All right. Now, just to comment on that, there is an opportunity, if you wish, to submit a draft of that project group assignment partway through the semester. It won't be marked formally, but we give you some feedback about that. If you don't wish to submit that, that's fine, but there's an opportunity, if you wish to do that, you have the opportunity to submit a draft and get some feedback on you, see how you're going. Okay, there's 3 external students in this course, and just noting for the video that they actually have slightly different assessment tasks to replace that group assignment. All right. Just make sure that you just check the submission dates on the ECP, because the admin people told me that I had put these dates down. 11th of August apparently is a Sunday, so they're just actually updating the dates, the submission dates, so they will change slightly over the next couple of days. Okay, so I think it'll go to Monday the 12th or something like that. So the official submission dates are what's on the ECP. All right, so just make sure you're aware of those dates. Like I said, the admin people are just in the process of updating a couple of those dates, because they said the submission should be on a weekday, not on a weekend. All right, and so just make sure you check that in the next few days. All assessment items, well, you've only have 2 assessment items this semester. They need to be submitted electronically. So your mind map and also your group assignment will be submitted electronically through Blackboard. All right. Just saying here, make sure you don't just try to submit right up to the deadline. The assignments are due at 2 p.m. So sometimes things go wrong. I'd prefer if it's better you don't have to submit them at 2 p.m. You can submit them at 12 p.m. or 8 a.m. in the morning if you wish, or even the night before. But if you have problems during the submission thing, the best, you should first contact the Blackboard people. Sometimes they can help you. Often I get students say, I submitted the wrong file. So make sure when you're selecting the file to submit, that's actually the correct file. Maybe this semester we won't get anyone who sends me that email in a panic saying I've submitted the wrong file. So just check the file names before you actually click on submit, that you've actually got the right file. Usually if you do that, send me an email and I can allow you to make another submission. All right, but it's best to not be doing that at 1 minute to 2 in the afternoon to reduce some stress. So the final exam for the new students, if you're not aware, all courses at UQ have what they call a hurdle. Right? That means, in most cases, that hurdle is the final exam. Right? Which means that even though you you have to pass the final exam, essentially. All right? So if you don't pass the final exam, then you won't pass the course. All right? Now, there's been some rule changes this year in relation to hurdles and in relation to eligibility for supplementary assessment. So just make sure you're aware of that. So now, if you're only going to be eligible for supplementary assessment if you get between 47% and 50% on the final exam. If you fail the final exam really badly, normally you're not eligible for any supplementary assessment. So it used to be that if you passed the course overall and failed the final exam, you could get a supplementary assessment. But those rules have changed as of this year. And I wasn't aware of that, and most students didn't seem to be aware of it last semester either. So make sure you read the ECP. That information is actually in there about the hurdles. Make sure you understand what the hurdles are and what's required of you to pass the course. All right? So let's just talk about evidence. So what we want when you're developing your proposal as a group assignment, it's important that you use evidence from the published literature to support your proposal. So what that means is you need to be reading the literature around the area that you're proposing to do research on. So you need to be looking at the refereed scientific literature around that area that you're doing your research proposal on. And you need to be able to use that literature to support what you are proposing to do. All right? So you would use the literature to identify an area of interest that could be the subject of research that is novel in some way. All right? So that is not already known in the literature. So that would be your first thing you want to know, is what is known in the literature. Where is there a potential area that could be researched? All right? Then you also need to use the literature to provide a justification for the methodologies that you propose to use. All right? So just be aware that you can't just state what you want to do. You actually have to support your proposed research using the published literature to provide evidence that that's actually an appropriate thing to do in your area of research. So in order to successfully complete that assignment, you need to be reading the published literature in that area that you will be doing your research proposal on. Okay, and as everybody will be doing a slightly different project, that literature that you read will be slightly different. All right. Now we often get students say, I can't find anything in the published literature about this. All right. Now, if what you're doing is actually novel and never been done before, you won't find in the literature exactly what you're doing. So you need to think about it and look around broadly around the topic. Okay. So for the first assignment on mind map and researchable questions, what you need to do is, this is an individual assignment, so you can nominate any area of research, any research topic that's relevant to agriculture, food sciences, animal sciences, agribusiness, and that general topic, those general areas that you're of interest in. What we then want you to do is develop a mind map exploring the research issues around that topic, and then from that identify a specific area that could be a topic for future research on your mind map. And then from that, we want you to develop 3 researchable questions. And next week we'll talk a bit more about what makes a question researchable. All right. And then you have to submit that your mind map as described in the ECP, and it's submitted via Blackboard. So some students will say to me, oh, I stuffed up my submission on Blackboard, so I'm emailing it to you. Well, that doesn't work. So if you've done something wrong when you submit it, send me an email. I can then fix that for you, and then allows you to resubmit it on Blackboard. We can't take the submissions by email. All right, so everything has to be done by Blackboard. So, looking at the group assignment, just a little bit of details about what you need to do. So, this will be a group assignment with 3 students in each group. Now, unless enrolments change, yesterday we had 60 students enrolled in this course across St Lucia and Gatton. So it means if we divide that by 3, we've got 15 groups. So I've set up 15 groups on Blackboard that you can self-enrol in. I'll just have to check the enrolment over the next couple of days to see if that goes up, and if it does, we can create 1 or 2 more groups. All right. So at the moment, the groups are available, and so what I'm encouraging you to do is form up your groups as soon as possible, and to start thinking about what you guys will be working on for your group proposal. All right. If after a couple of weeks that people aren't enrolled, I'm just going to enrol you into groups. So it's better off if you choose your own groups and get that done. But if you don't enrol in a group, I will just put you randomly into groups. All right. So I encourage you to find your own group over the next week and enrol. All right. Because we only have 13 weeks in the semester and mid-semester break, and so you will find that the time will go by really quickly, and the sooner you can start on this group assignment and start thinking about what you're actually going to work on, start reading the literature, the better off you'll be. All right, and split that task up amongst your group members. So each group has to independently select a research topic, identify 3 researchable questions around that topic, and work together to develop a research proposal around that selected topic of research. All right. What we want you to do is develop this as a multidisciplinary focus to the project. So one research question has to focus on biophysical research, another one has to focus on social science aspect of that topic, and the other one could be whatever you choose, maybe cross-cutting type research question, or goes into something in more detail. But at least you have to have a social science aspect and a biophysical science aspect to the project. All right? So thinking about that is probably larger than what most students would do. So most students would either be in one area or the other, so you wouldn't necessarily try to focus to capture biophysical and social science research within the scope of a single MSc project. Sometimes they can do that, but not often. So what you can conceptualise this, because we have to think about what the scope of the project could be. So think about this potentially as 2 or 3 master's students working on a related project. All right? So it has to be a project that can be accomplished within a time frame of an MSc research program. So that's within 12 months, typically, 2 semesters. So don't put up a project that's going to take you 2 years to do or 5 years. So you have to think about something that could still be done within the framework of a master's project, but maybe think about a project where you might have 2 or 3 people working on a related topic, okay? And they can explore different areas of the same topic. All right? So for the assignment, each group needs to develop a conceptual framework for their proposal, and you can use a mind map to do that. So, but there are other tools if you choose to use them. There's different sorts of concept diagrams that are available if you search the literature, but if you choose to use a mind map, that's fine. And again, so you need to think about this topic that you're going to do, explore the ideas around that, and use that to help you to identify researchable questions. And as I said before, you have to have, of those 3 research questions that you propose and that you will address through research, one has to focus on biophysical aspects of the topic, and another one needs to focus more on social science aspects of the topic. All right? So that's where you would use social science type methodologies to collect evidence to answer the question, and the other side you might use different types of either an experiment or maybe some sort of comparison study to actually identify evidence to answer those questions. And what you need to ensure is that your research questions are interlinked, so they have a clear linkage, so it's not like two disparate type things, but they actually have a linkage together to form a unified proposal. All right, so that's where the concept diagram is usually, concept framework is usually really important to make sure that you're actually producing a set of research questions that are interlinked and are meaningful as being compared together. All right. So the final exam, just a little bit about this. So last semester we changed the structure of the final exam, and so the final exam has two parts of it. So it's a comprehensive. So what it does is it covers the content of the course, so the materials that develop through the lectures part and through the tutorials, and also some of the supplementary reading. All right. So there's some multi-choice questions which deal with content. All right. So and those should be available from last semester to have a look at. And then there's also the second part of the assignment is essay questions. So it's a 2-hour exam, and the multi-choice questions last semester there were 30, so I assume we'll have about the same in the coming exam. And so, maybe it takes you 30 or 40 minutes to answer those multi-choice questions. So we're leaving you an hour and a half to answer two essay questions. So you think about that. We're expecting you to make a fairly detailed response on the exam to those essay questions and not a paragraph. All right. So those questions are, and you'll see when you look at last semester's exams, what we're proposing is some sort of scenario in research and asking you to demonstrate through your response they actually understand the concepts of research methodologies as they apply to those situations. All right. So it's not just we're not just expecting you to tell us back what we saw, what the content of the lectures were. All right. So we need to demonstrate an integrated understanding of the methodologies. All right. So questions about the course structure. A little bit, I guess, about. I think I've put on yes. If you look on the ECP, you'll see the under the learning activities. We'll look at that a bit, but I've actually listed them all out for the semester as well. All right. So you can see what the topics are each week. So any questions about the structure of the course or the assessment? People at St. Lucia, I should be able to hear you too. You might have to come up to the microphone to ask a question. No questions? Anybody? All clear? Oh no, everyone's afraid to ask a question. All right. All good? Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to the next part. Oh, not that one. I'll have to get it off the book. So connecting. Come on. The Wi-Fi is being upgraded at the moment, apparently. It doesn't always work. plug in my internet cable. Come on. Okay, so just to show you the Blackboard site. Just a reminder, I don't know if you saw this announcement yesterday. There's actually the library is organising a number of sessions for students in School of Agriculture and Food Science. There's actually one that's on now, but Tuesday 23rd. But there is one. There's one at Gatton here on Friday, and so they're actually covering some of these topics: introduction to library services, search strategies using databases, assessing impact quality of papers, and introducing use of EndNote. So I'd encourage you guys that those things are all relevant to you as students in Coursework Masters program. And I think there's the same session, there's the same one is also offered on Thursday at St. Lucia. So I'd strongly encourage you guys to sign up for one of those two courses, because those topics will actually be useful for this course and also for you as students who are undertaking a research project. So it'd be a really good idea to sign up for one of those. It doesn't cost you anything. It just costs you a bit of time on Thursday or Friday to do that. And those skills are actually, this one's about EndNote libraries, but that will be useful as well. It's a bit unfortunate, that one there, but if you guys are at St. Lucia and you want to come to the course, you can always come out on the bus, come out to sunny Gatton and attend the course here and learn how friendly everybody is at Gatton. So you could still attend that. The bus is free, and so you just come out on the bus and you can be here. What's that doing? I don't want that. Okay, so look at those courses. Seriously, strongly encourage you guys to sign up for particularly that course on Friday here at Gatton, because that will be really useful for you. All right. So just note that. In terms of the course, so you can, if you haven't looked at that you can access the course profiles through here. I'll just look at the Gatton one. And as I said, mostly the primary thing that you're interested in is assessment, which is down here. They still haven't changed that. I'll have to have a look at those dates, maybe change that. But look at the assessment policy. And here is information about the assessment items. All right, so we've talked about this generally, but make sure you read through that as well. All right, and then information here about what's required for the group assignment. Okay, and the exam there is at the end. So that information that we just talked about there is in the ECP, and as I said, like the 11th of August, I'm pretty sure that's actually. It's a Sunday, so that needs to be changed to a Monday. So those dates will just be slightly updated. And I think the 13th of October is also a Sunday, so I stuffed that up when I did that. Anyway, those will just get moved to the Monday submission dates. All right. The reason for that is if you have problems when the submissions are going on, that the Blackboard staff are available to help you if you have some issue. All right, which wouldn't be available on the weekend. So have a look at the course profile there. All right. The other part is the learning resources. I I don't quite know why we have 3 lots of recordings, but the recordings are done automatically. There seems to be, so because the course is taught via a video link, it actually gets recorded at Gatton and at St Lucia. So there's usually 2 copies, which is good because sometimes one of them doesn't work. Have a look. There's also a learning guide here that has a number of modules that you can read through, which gives you additional information about the topics that we're talking about in class. And you're strongly encouraged to read that, work through those modules independently. Okay? And I've also put there's quite a bit of other material here as reading material that's worth having a look at, as well as some of the other content. Back up here. And each week there will be a folder for the content in each week. So this is this week. So we've done the introduction to the course. Now I just want to talk to you about research paradigms, and you can see there's some links to the modules here as well. So let's talk about paradigms. I'm doing this wrong. I know. I can't find my other copy of it. Done something wrong. That's okay. So I'm going to talk to you about paradigms. So a paradigm is is basically the way we view the world and the theories and methodologies of a particular scientific subject. All right, so each discipline in research, or each discipline of science, has a different set of methodologies, all right, that they use to investigate the world around us. And they also have a different set of theories about how the world works and how they see themselves as a researcher in relation to what they are working on. So this comes from a book by Thomas Kuhn, and it was published quite some time ago. But if you're interested, you could have a look at that. It's called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. The way our paradigm that we have, the way we view the world, it affects a number of things about research. It affects how we understand what research is, or what good research is, and also the way we do research, so the methodologies that we apply. It also affects the types of questions that we are asking, and it also affects the sort of language that we use as researchers within a discipline, and the underlying assumptions that we make and we use in doing research. And so these things, because each area or discipline has a different set of language, different set of assumptions, this can cause problems when we're working with people in different discipline areas who have a different underlying set of assumptions about how the world works, and a different set of language when they're talking about doing research. All right? So in order for us to work together in multidisciplinary teams, we need to understand each other's language and assumptions. All right? So this is an old cartoon about a blind man having a look at an elephant, and it's a little bit the same way. You know, when we're doing research, we are investigating the unknown, all right, something we don't know anything about. And in some ways we're groping around in the dark trying to find answers. But depending on where we start, or our perspective, we can have a different view of that question. Okay? So our perspective of the world depends on, our view of the world depends on our perspective. All right? So here are a few examples. So we can think about a scenario where we're working in Africa with poor farmers, resource poor farmers, and we could think about 3 different scenarios. So the first one is, and as a plant breeder, I've developed a number of varieties of maize that I've tested in various trials, and I know that the best variety outperforms what they're currently using in the country in those soil and rainfall conditions. All right. Or, sorry, I misread that. That was the second question. So the first one is we actually want to do that research and find out which one's the best. The second one is we've already done that experiment, and now we've released a variety and we've given it to the farmers, but the farmers don't want to grow that variety. All right, they don't have any interest in adopting a new variety, even though we've done all this research and we know that it's actually better than what they use at the moment. All right, and we want to know, well, why don't the farmers want to grow this new variety? The third scenario is that we want to develop a research paradigm that works with the farmers to understand and improve their conditions as tenants, landless tenants, and victims of multinational pricing controls. So we're actually a different scenario. We're working with the same group of people in the same area. Okay, so we could have 3 different ways of looking at that situation. All right. So when we think about paradigms, research paradigms, they have 3 components. One is what's called ontology, all right? And now that's how we think the world works and what is the nature of reality. So essentially what we're thinking, the 2 different ones, is it something that's predictable and that can be measured objectively, or is it not? Right? Is it subjective? Is your view of reality objective or is it subjective? It also has a component called epistemology. All right, and that is the relationship between us as researchers and the things that we want to know about. All right. So we could think about, are we a detached observer, so a value-free scientist, or are we an engaged participant in that system? All right. And needing to recognise that our own values can influence the outcome of the research. And then there's a component about methodology, so the methods that we actually use to investigate the world around us. Right, so we have 3 things. So most of the work that we do in agricultural science will either fall into a paradigm of positivism or a paradigm of constructivism. Right? There are other ones, and there's some that sort of overlap, but generally speaking, most people would fall into one of those 2 groups in the way they conceptualise research and do research. So the first one we talked about as a plant breeder, we've developed varieties of maize and we want to know which one is the most suitable for a given set of soil and rainfall or environmental conditions in the country. Well, that's really a positivist framework. All right. So the way we understand reality, ontology, okay, is that we can know and measure what is real, and this can be understood in terms of the laws of nature and it's objective. So the idea is that if I grow a particular variety in a particular set of circumstances and I do that today, I should get the same results tomorrow. All right? That we can measure reality objectively. All right? And how do we understand how to find out about the world? Well, normally in this sort of framework, we develop hypotheses, we run experiments under control conditions or at some level of control conditions, and we test whether that is true or false. Right? Normally the aim of the research is to explain some phenomena, to predict what's going on, or to control something, or to develop some sort of technology. And generally speaking, the role of observer in this sort of paradigm is someone, and I always find this as a disinterested scientist, and that doesn't mean that you're not actually interested in your research. It means that you are separate from, that you are not personally involved in the research. You're just overseeing that, you're an objective observer of the situation. All right? And that's where most sort of biophysical science fits under that paradigm. All right? Then when we think about positivism, we think about, well, what's the role of biases and values? And under positivism, the good research is viewed as being value-free, right? Unbiased. And so what we're trying to do is to eliminate bias, personal prejudice, and so that we can be value-free. In reality, it's never possible because we all have preconceptions about the way we think things should go, should work, and sometimes that's very difficult to eliminate that completely from our research. All right? And in this case, what makes good research? That it's rigorous, that it's objective, that it has internal validity, and it's reproducible. It's I'll say reproducible. Okay? And how do we communicate research? Well, typically we communicate research under this value through established authoritative sources, things like journals, all right, publications. And typically this means that we value communication as seen as a one-way communication. So the researcher, as the person who knows everything, communicating that in a one-way fashion to an audience who's usually unknown. Okay? Findings may be presented to be widely applicable. So often what we're trying to do in this framework is to draw conclusions from an experimental framework and apply that to a broader context. All right? So those are the sorts of things that we're trying to do under a positivist framework. Now, constructivism is that second question that we were talking about. So we've gone through that process. We've run our experiments. We found out that this particular variety outperforms the current variety that the farmers are growing by 10 or 20%. And this is a real question. I have a student, he's from Bhutan, he's a potato breeder, and now they found a variety of potato in Bhutan that outperforms the current variety, but then not everybody, and they released this a number of years ago, but not everybody is growing the variety. And so it becomes a question of why aren't they growing that variety? And there could be a lot of reasons why farmers are not growing that variety. It could be that they don't know about it, or they might not have the resources to buy new seed potatoes, or the seed potatoes might not be available. So there could be a whole range of reasons. There could be cultural reasons, there could be social reasons that they haven't adopted. It could just taste terrible, or it could be that it takes longer to cook. I had a friend of mine was doing surveys of in Asia on salt-tolerant varieties of rice, and everybody knew it grew better, agronomically better, but it didn't taste very good. The local farmers preferred their traditional varieties to the new varieties, so they would grow their old varieties just because they tasted better, because most of the rice was being grown to feed their families, and it was only the surplus that was sold. So they were more interested in the taste of it than they were in the productivity. So there could be a lot of reasons why farmers choose not to adopt a new technology. So under this sort of constructivism, what we're trying to do is how we understand the nature of reality. In this case, reality is relative and consists of different constructions depending on your point of view. Now, so you could think about this, that I as a plant breeder have one view of reality. All right? I view reality that I've developed this variety. I've spent the last 10 years of my life doing this. This one is much better than this one. Why aren't you growing? Right? That's my view of reality. But your view of reality is maybe as a farmer is completely different. All right? Now, each person's has a different... So now we're thinking about there are different mental constructions of reality. Right? That there isn't just one system. And under this, each person or each group of people has potentially a different construction of the way they view the world. And in this case, then each one is equally valid. Right? Some may be less informed than others, but they're still no less valid than another person's construction of reality. Right? So this, rather than thinking about the rules of nature and that things are reproducible and replicable, we're now thinking about different constructions about the world around us. All right? Now, when I started thinking about these things as a boy, I thought, that's just strange, you know. That was just like, I couldn't understand that. It took me a long time to think about the fact that reality wasn't one thing. All right? And many of you, if you come to this as a biophysical scientist, maybe you think, well, this is strange. You know, the facts are the facts, but how each of us interprets the world around us actually, depending on our social circumstances, our way we brought out, our religion, our gender, can influence the way we view the world. All right? So we have different constructions of reality. All right? And under this framework, how do we find out about the world? Well, in this case, the findings are jointly created through interactions between the researcher and the participant. All right? So it's no longer now a detached observer looking at the situation from outside, making observations, collecting data, and making conclusions. Here we're thinking about systems where the researcher is interacting with the research participants. And the aim of research is to find an informed consensus of views, to understand each other better, understand what's going on in that situation, understand people's constructions of reality, understand why they think the world works that way. All right? So in this case, the aim of research is to understand these different constructions of reality that people have of a particular situation that we're thinking about. And research may aim to have more informed constructions of reality. So that might be to engender some sort of change in the way people view the world. In this case, the researcher, rather than being detached or disinterested in the system, is regarded as an empathising participant. Right? So completely different. Roles of values and biases. Okay, under constructivism, we need to acknowledge the values that the researcher has, can shape the inquiry. And so it might be necessary for the researcher to actually tell the participants about what their biases are. Right, so to be upfront and actually to tell people about that. Sometimes it's not. In this case, what makes good research? Fairness that enlarges group understanding of the research issues. Yeah, good research in this case is educational and empowering. Right. How do we communicate research? Well, normally it's through dialogue with the participants. So rather than making generalised rules, what we're thinking about is rich descriptions of what's actually happening in this particular circumstance. Findings may actually be local and difficult to generalise, but of course can be published as well as any other type of research project. All right. I'm not going to talk about that one. You can have a look at that and also look at the module. And like I said, it's not common in agricultural research, but essentially the difference here is it's transformative or critical thinking. You can see that the role of the researcher is essentially as a transforming intellectual, trying to advocate change, so it's working as an activist. So often in this type of research model, we're trying to bring about change in some sort of some situation. All right? So in the example we talked about where farmers were landless, where farmers were being controlled by external pricing structures, research might be trying to bring about empowerment of those farmers through providing information. It might be about changing policy and legislation to actually improve their nature of reality for those farmers. All right? So it's a transform, and some of our research has that, but not necessarily as the primary objective. All right? So, I think about research I work on projects in Laos, they're funded by the Australian government, and it's agricultural development projects. But part of that is actually about providing information for policy changes. So through that process, we develop policy briefs, we submit them to the government, and that is transformative in that sense. All right? But that's not the primary objective of what we're doing research about. The research really sits more under the positivist framework and or the constructivist framework. So that's where most of the research is done. But having said that, often it does have a transformative aspect as well. And so just quickly, so what are we trying to do in this search? See, under this sort of transformative critical theory, what makes good research? It should lead to awareness and stimulation of socially transforming conditions. Okay, so we're trying to actually good research in this case actually changes social structures. And as I said, most of what we do, most people who work in agriculture or food science or animal science, that's not the primary motivation for what we're doing, but often we're trying to make the world better as well. So we're actually trying to come about social change in some way, transformation. There are other types of paradigms, all right? So this is Helen's area. So some people say that participatory is a paradigm. Helen's got a comment here. She says she believes it's a methodology rather than a paradigm, as it has participatory research programs have points in common with a number of other paradigms. There's one called pragmatism, which is focused on problems, which can mix both positive and constructivism. And probably in reality, a lot of us are pragmatists, and we probably fit in with that sort of framework a bit of both. And anyway, there are others there. There's one called political economy, another one called systems thinking. But like I said, most of what we're looking at fits within one of those two paradigms in general. So in summary, when we think about research and what's common to research across different discipline areas, so research is always about asking questions, right? Exploring the world around us to provide evidence to answer those questions, interpreting that evidence, understanding what's going on in a way to aid understanding, and eventually to construct knowledge, to turn that